Places of worship.
People have become, they've had to distance from death and have become more desensitized.
Funerals have suddenly become more meaningful to our people.
There's massive costs in terms of relationships and how people relate to each other and feel and care and trust one another.
It's unexpected, it's violent, it's sudden, and so that shock is registered differently.
Life has lost all meaning, and death has become the thing.
But what strikes me here working in the clinic is regardless of where people come from, the pain is the same.
We live our lives as though impervious to the end. But when disease intervenes, our mortality becomes reality. Our death is coldly foretold in offices and hospitals. The sanctuaries of our modern seers, the doctors.
The doctor tells me that I have 4 months to live.
Anything could happen.
The doctor was very perturbed and he told my husband about it.
One would be shocked.
My husband felt so upset that he didn't want to tell me.
I wouldn't go into severe depression.
Either I'd become very depressed and end up committing suicide.
And I would just become much more active.
It's my fate, you know.
Well, I would kind of spend the last 4 months kind of having a party.
I don't think I'd go out and be extravagant because you never know what could happen.
It would be then my time to die. For me, it's fine.
2 months down the line, it could go away.
He asked the doctor to tell me.
When you're going to have to break bad news, like telling someone they're going to die, or they've got a terminal disease, usually you know the patient from beforehand.
I said to him, give it to me in a simple English. So I said, Jeff, cancer of the spine.
Usually when you say that to a patient, they don't remember everything else that you say. And it's best not to go on talking about everything because they won't remember.
And I just said, okay. He says, did you hear me? I said, yes, but I don't accept that.
It was told to me by a doctor.
I usually like to be fairly direct, again, so that there's no misunderstanding.
My first thoughts were not basically for myself, but who I'd actually put at risk.
He said, did you hear me? I said, yes. Do you understand? Yes, I do.
And it basically was a death sentence. I sort of went home and I sat down and waited to die.
And he said, I'm so sorry, my girl. I'm really sorry. And I said to him, don't be sorry. I'm going to live, doctor. I'm not going to die.
It was just when. It's just almost as if you're looking at your watch and saying, when's this going to happen?
Never ever put a time limit on it, because you can't.
July last year, they said it's a matter of time, maybe 2-3 months for the longest.
One actually sort of starts looking forward to it.
You can give vague indications, but extremely vague.
To hell with what medicine says, to hell with what the doctor says.
And the doctor says I have cancer, but what does my God say?
They can get their lives in order, they can plan what they're going to do.
Our studio is basically a body piercing studio. We do everything from facial, body and genitals. I'm neurotic about sterility and cleanliness and that type of thing. Being HIV is like having a loaded gun in your hand.
Terminal means terminate, you're going to die.
So if you believe you're going to die in 6 months' time, you'll die.
I took it one day at a time, praying, being very positive about this pain. Look, I didn't know how God was going to do it, but I knew I'm going to get better.
Oh, every time I got a cold, I thought, is this it?
I had friends, cards from all over coming to the hospital, phone calls coming to the hospital.
Time becomes precious. You get really agitated when people waste your time.
I'm prepared to die if the Lord calls me.
You realize that your time is limited and you're trying to accomplish as much as you can.
I'd love to see my grandchildren grown up.
One sort of stops thinking about death. This becomes basically a boring subject.
I would love to see them married.
They may be society's instruments of revenge, or the deliverers of their own pain. They we are the killers.
It should be brought back.
People kill and the next day they are walking free.
If somebody's prepared to take a life, they must be prepared to give their life.
Very clear no.
People will think twice before they kill.
Definitely not.
I would go for death penalty.
For murder,
Their life should also be taken.
being a necrophiliac.
The only reason for the death penalty is the revenge issue.
That will teach a person to respect his neighbor.
It's such a bad vibe.
The state has the right to take life.
But it is a revenge thing.
I mean, if someone's sort of gone off and raped 1,000,000 women, I really couldn't be bothered if he was killed.
Be honest about it.
I'm an investigative psychologist in the South African Police Service, usually investigating serial killer and serial rape cases, sadistic lust, murder, sexually motivated crimes.
I'm still working at maximum prison.
Most people are capable of murder, given in certain circumstances.
When the gallows was open, I was working there for 2 years.
In a murder, we can usually look for a motive. Was it passion? Was it revenge? Was it financial, etc., greed, etc.? With a serial killer, that's not true. He kills strangers, and he kills it for some kind of psychological manifestation.
Everybody knows about the stairs you pick the people up, and then you come into a first room, and then you put the mist on the heads.
The visionary serial killer would be a person that acts on a vision. In other words, a voice of God told him to kill certain people.
And then I will be asked if they have any last requests.
The serial killer with a mission is the one that believes he has to kill all prostitutes or firstborn Jewish boys.
And after that, you take it through another room to the gallows room. There's a big wooden floor with footprints on it.
The lust serial killer is the one that's mainly got a sexual motive, and the power serial killer is the one that's got power over life and death.
You'll take your man with your left hand, and you will take him to the footprints where he must stand.
To him, it's a manifestation of his existence. It's an existential excitement.
And then the executioner will come, and he will put the rope around his neck, and then he will pull down the mist.
The crime scene to him is like an artwork. It's the same way that an artist would express himself.
And when he's finished, you pull the lever, and the people will eventually fall down.
Serial killer enjoys the act of killing.
You must be there, you must be present. If there was execution and you wasn't present, you were mad, you know.
You could have twin boys in a family. They could both be exposed to family violence, to sexual or physical abuse. They would both have the same social circumstances. One of them would become a serial killer and the other one not. So I think it actually lies within the individual.
If I take my memories back and I look into that person's eyes, it's empty. His eyes is empty. There's no emotion. It's empty.
And you look into his eyes, you realize a serial killer is not born. He's made. It's a person that reacts. And he reacts because of pain. Serial killers aren't happy people. They don't see people as human beings that can experience pain.
The first time you go up there, there's no time to look around. It's very quick, sudden, and it's over.
The feeling of arresting a serial killer, in a few cases I've been there when they've arrested the serial killer, is a feeling of elation. At last it's stopping. This person is not going to kill more people again ever.
You totally lose your emotions, you know. If somebody dies, somebody will cry, and you will think it's stupid for people to cry over a dead body lying there.
The crime scene that I'm sitting at the moment is a crime scene where a young girl in Durban was killed. She came down to the river to sit and read her book, and she was overpowered by a serial killer who raped her and killed her, and he threw her body in the water. And unfortunately, that's where her father had found her, was drifting in the water.
You take him to his coffin, and the marks around his neck, the face, you know, that's gruesome. it's not nice to see.
It's weird being at a crime scene. I'm very alert. And my senses open up because I try to pick up the killer. I mean, this is actually what he's done. I'm often aware of the wind. I'm very much aware of it now. There's always a kind of a peaceful wind blowing, as if the horror that had happened on that spot has disappeared.
I think that is the baddest part from the whole thing, is that phase afterwards.
We'd found 10 bodies, in one area, and we had to move from the one body to the next body, and they were in various stages of decomposition. Some of them were just skeletons, some of them were fresh, some of them were full of maggots. You have to be able to think like him in order to catch him. I think by the time he's been apprehended, you know him so well already that you can recognize him.
The type of job I was doing, maybe because of that I won't go to heaven.
I've got a very religious outlook on death.
But I think I will go.
I'm also very sad when people close to me die, obviously, and I would surely miss them.
After working there, all things change. You lose respect for people, you start getting aggressive, you drink a lot, it starts getting addictive, it affects your life.
I think I have to be mentally very strong.
The only time where you can get that adrenaline back in your body is when you've been at the execution.
I like life. I wouldn't like to die before it's my time.
The changing point in my life when my mother died.
Whoever looks into the abyss should be careful that the abyss doesn't look into you.
That's the time emotion came back to me.
I dove into the abyss and I think I know what it's like.
Luckily, some of us, a lot of us, came through this thing very good. Some people didn't make it. I know about people. We're only human beings, and it was hard.
The warrior's death is a worthy defeat, a sacrifice of the one for the good of the many. Legends and songs flourish around the vanquished and the triumphant. History judges who are the heroes and who are the murderers.
I decided to join MK because of the policies of apartheid.
I went into the army when I was 17 years old. I applied to go into the medics because I wanted to help people, not kill people.
I was reluctant to take up arms, but I was forced to do it.
There, one had to grapple and come to terms with the fact that people die.
People died in front of me.
Everything I was confronted with was people shot and people blown apart.
I remember a situation where we were attacked.
Being confronted by a patient who had arms and legs blown off.
That experience where I saw my own comrades die had an enormous effect on me.
I realized that actually my emotional state cannot handle this. Consciously and subconsciously, I just took a decision to close down my emotional system.
The experience of people doing inhuman things.
While I was bandaging him up and putting drips in and trying to save his life, my unit commander was interrogating him. And in his frustration, in the heat of that moment, he assassinated the guy. And I was kind of working and the guy was shot in the head right here.
War is human slaughter.
I was involved in an ambush situation, which was exceptionally frightening.
I was cornered in a farmhouse and I was shot.
according to the doctors, with almost 13 bullets.
I do not remember anything from the beginning to the end other than large flashes of light and lots of sound.
I remember a lot of blood oozing from my body.
We were driving down a road in a Casper.
At first it was warm.
There was a couple of swapper guys on the side of the road, and we turned in towards them, and they shot a rocket through the engine of the Casper.
And I remember getting dizzy. I was getting cold, and I switched off.
I sat there and cocked my rifle and aimed it at him and shot him, the dead body.
I was left to die. All of them, they were just encircling me.
And then later that night, throwing up and feeling absolutely terrible, and everybody laughing at me and saying, you know, that's what happens to people, you know, and we all went through it, and you'll get over it, and you'll get used to this kind of thing.
According to them, I was a terrorist.
One realizes the humanity of your enemy at a point like that.
I lost consciousness then.
In battle situations, everybody's shooting, and who knows who shot what.
I woke up 9 days after in the Johannesburg hospital.
I never wanted to be involved in killing people.
I wondered what was happening.
You can't attach humanity to it, because in attaching humanity to it, you suddenly realize, hell, what am I dealing with here?
The doctor was leading the team, called people, and the team was clapping hands.
I think I got caught, in a sense, in the excitement of death.
For me, it was better to die rather than to suffer a lot of pain.
I was handling people's lives, and through my hands was passing people, and some were dying and some were living.
If it needs that I should die in order for other people to live, let it be so.
I'm more in touch with my humanity, I'm more in touch with my emotion than I was had I not been through that.
If people would just forget me and not attach any importance to my death, I would not be prepared to die.
Nature's most powerful command. Yet with suicide, we strike against the fickleness of existence. We decide. It is the last cry against the humbling dictates of fate.
I've come very close to suicide.
It would be easier.
My friends rejected me, and I thought, well, what's life without friends?
If they want to take their lives, then it's their life.
It all just seemed too complicated.
It's the most assertive act you can make.
Even if I was terribly depressed and everything was going wrong,
it's choosing your own life.
I'd still want to hang on to the last minutes of life.
So I just wanted to sort of leave it.
It's an expression of your disdain for reality.
As much hardcore drugs as I could find in the house.
People are not in their right mind.
Cutting my wrists.
If you're going to do it right.
Watching the blood fall into the basin.
Ledge outside my 11th story window and kind of looked down and thought,
Choosing to turn your back on everything that makes what we perceive as reality.
And it was kind of a conscious decision that said, I want to live. And
there's so much in life that's worth living for.
And then I woke up the next morning in an absolutely ecstatic mood.
I found it tragic.
One of the best moods I've ever been in. It's like, yay, life.
It was fear. It was just, I wanted to hurt everyone at the same time, you know, just by doing this, just saying cheers, goodbye.
Gerard was my son, my youngest son. He was 22 when he committed suicide.
The first time I did it, it was more of a sort of, there is no way to turn. This is the only escape out.
He had problems with fitting into society.
I was going through a very bad patch of my life. My family was going through very bad patches of their life. They were fighting.
He never knew where he wanted to be.
Girlfriend problems.
He thought it would be the answer to all his problems.
It was actually a period when everything was just cooking up and brewing, getting worse and worse.
Why he eventually committed suicide, nobody will ever know. I mean, he was a very confused person at the end, very unhappy, very unsettled.
was sitting alone and I was thinking about the whole concept, you know. And I mean, I said, look, well, since I'm thinking about it now and I have been thinking about it for quite a while, might as well just do it now.
I found him in his bed, unconscious. He was dying already by the time I got him.
Look, that's it. I'm gonna end it right here.
It was a tremendous blow, but we got the paramedics and they came and they helped, the doctor did. And we got him to hospital and we pulled him through.
Finished on this planet and there's nothing more to live for.
The second time he made very sure that he wasn't at home when he did this because he wanted it to succeed.
A quick revenge sort of thing. I mean, I want you to feel that now I'm going to die and you must, you know, maybe have some feeling towards that.
He had a party that evening for his friends and then he went off to a hotel where he booked a suite for himself and he put a do not disturb notice on the door.
After I cut the wrist, I said, okay, this is it. And I just held it like this. And I held it and I just felt blood going through and just stinging. My eyes just started closing and I couldn't see anymore. I tried to open my eyes, but I couldn't, right? So then I tried to touch my eyes and my eyes were open. So I didn't know what was going on because my eyes were open, but I couldn't see anything. I just blanked out, everything went dark.
Only the next morning when one of his friends got a little bit worried about it and made inquiries did we discover what he'd done. And then it was definitely too late to help him.
Man, there was a lot of crying and screaming and what you have.
We had him to psychologists after the first time, but he didn't seem to work with him and he didn't want to work with him. He didn't want to work this thing through.
You can either face a situation and try to sort it out, you can run away from things, or you can kill yourself.
I didn't ever get angry with Gerard because he committed suicide. I don't think it was right.
It was me trying to get back at everyone for sort of hurting me, and it was also trying to show everyone that I'm sort of there.
They're not thinking right. They can only think that this thing that they want to do is the right thing for them at that stage.
In that state before I did it, I would say that definitely rage. A lot of rage and a lot of just hate towards everyone else, just as though like you're being invaded and everyone's trying to sort of get at you.
They don't realize how many people it affects around them. It doesn't just affect the mother and the father or the wife and the children.
I got back and things were as sort of better. They seemed better after that.
The easier way out, I suppose you can call it.
It did happen. It did change me, and I mean, I feel great about myself at the moment. I've got nothing really bad happening in my life. It's sort of, the problem has been resolved, but I don't think it was resolved due to the fact that I tried to kill myself.
Being a mother, I hope he's in heaven. I don't know. Nobody knows for sure.
I feel that once you die, you just go to sleep and never wake up again.
And he must be much happier than what he was down here.
When pain precedes death, when it is unbearable, some seek to wrestle control and take the final step.
Yeah, it's a bit of a nasty issue.
If people are suffering and if they no longer want to live, who's to say that they can't?
If I was very ill and was on life-saving machines, I don't think I would want to be on them.
They should be allowed to be taken off the machine if they are on life support.
I'd rather die.
I don't think I'll be able to take an injection to end my life.
And they should be given an injection to kill them or something like that.
No matter what pain or suffering I was in.
I think voluntary euthanasia is excellent.
What I see my role as is facilitating the comfort of the patient and the people who are close to them.
What if I'd say to the doctor, look, you know, take the drips, just give me an injection and let me go.
I've often thought about euthanasia and about that type of thing.
We didn't allow suicide victims into the church for burial.
Our patients would have an ability to end their lives if they chose to.
If I got to a point where I was a burden on those around me,
I couldn't move. People had to push me this way, push me that way.
Very often they're surrounded by medications that they have access to.
My quality of life wasn't exactly up to scratch.
And the pain was there, the weakness.
This person was obviously suffering a great deal.
I had so much pain.
and there was absolutely nothing that could be done, I would consider it.
I prayed, and I actually asked God to take me away. I said, please let me die.
God will embrace that person.
And I thought about it, and I said, no, please cancel that prayer. I don't want to die.
What the patient is really asking for is, don't let me suffer.
We do it to a limited extent in terms of turning up morphine drips or increasing the sedation.
I will not hasten the process for them, and nor will I postpone it.
I wouldn't be happy doing euthanasia on somebody else.
No amount of medication will be withheld if it can relieve suffering. Then their request is answered, really.
And I mean, I'm alive.
A deep place in the mind is fascinated with our own destruction. We gamble with our lives. Perhaps we taste death to feel truly alive.
I think in a sense we all actually invite death.
If people are reckless,
For some people it's easier to think about it.
so if they drive their car fast and if they dodge walls and things like that,
For other people it's easier to place themselves in a situation that makes itself apparent,
yes, deep down they are wanting something to happen.
and then they can actually deal with it.
Risking your life probably does make life more potent.
Part of us wants to experience death, a way of almost cheating death. Experience a little bit of death to kind of know what it's like. Get to the edge and then you kind of laugh in death's face.
People who have to place themselves in danger, in a sense, could be alienated from their own nervous systems.
It's very bad to have lived your life and say, well, I was stuck in this room and I lived life very safely.
They might need the actual thrill of danger to bring death close to them.
You're going to die at some stage. You may as well enjoy life.
It's not like the 8 to 5 job, because a lot of things can happen in that period of time on a film.
Everybody theoretically has the death instinct within them.
When you do a massive stunt and you walk it, damn, I feel.
You're going to walk along that narrow ledge because you could fall off, but if you don't, then you've achieved something.
It's just a question of complete adrenaline.
It's the same thing that motivates people to take drugs. They want to be thrill seekers.
And you start getting like a tiger in a cage.
How mortal are you?
They want to be risk takers.
Your nerves start working then over time.
It's a way of almost daring death.
They don't want to just experience modern life in the way that society has laid out for us.
I still go up there and I still will fall 10 stories, 8 stories, where the case may be.
Other people died won't happen to me.
The altered states of consciousness that are experienced when people take psychedelics, for example, they often talk about it as a near-death experience.
We are less scared of death because we work with it every day of our lives.
When you are on drugs of various kinds of psychedelics, LSD, mescaline, peyote, psilocybin, magic mushrooms.
How immortal are you?
And that high state of consciousness is something that we attain when we die.
I mean, we go into a car roll like anybody would climb into a car in the morning and drive to work.
It immediately takes every aspect of your life, whether you're denying it to yourself or not, and shoves it in your face and says, here it is.
You don't think of anything else.
Things about yourself you don't like.
Are you going to get out of the car?
Suppressing a fear of death.
You don't think of death.
You have to deal with it, or you lose it, like some people do.
Get on a horse's back, you know for a fact that within 30 yards you're going to leave that horse.
I happened under various circumstances to take a relatively large dose, some might say insanely large dose of LSD.
I've broken my shoulders from falling off horses.
I had the opportunity to not only experience all the events of my life,
my hips and my vertebrae are cracked a couple of times,
and be extremely hypercritical about them to myself in a, some might say, very, very horrible, hellish kind of way.
Broken my ankles to us.
It went through a sort of glass ceiling, if you will, into the next level.
Broken there and knuckles gone.
What I would refer to as the oneness of all.
You can feel your whole body just come up into your throat.
And it's the most brilliant place that you could ever be.
I've never actually thought of death.
Definitely, I didn't want to come back from there. It was very, very nice.
It's such a pleasure. It's such the adrenaline that you pump up before the time to do that stunt is great.
It was a fundamentally, personally transformative experience.
Damn it, I've done it again.
I felt no fear, except the kind of fear we feel when something in our lives is going to change.
Our dread of death and our hunger to create are closely bound together. Artists have always seen that link. To make art is to wrestle death.
There has always been a link between art and death.
That's the event that all our lives are literally leading up to.
It's trying to make sense of a crazy world, trying to make sense of a crazy life that artists have always been interested in.
Dark can be very embracing, as is death.
It has connotations that are religious, that are physical, that are spiritual.
Artists have always painted the crucifixion scene.
Our fascination with skulls.
Taking Christ off the cross.
With coffins.
Rembrandt painted autopsies.
It is romanticism.
There's always been this very bizarre, almost macabre interest in death.
For the person who would physically drink blood, it would be as real as the person who has communion.
Within Christianity, the idea of death and the images of death are so prevalent.
It is a ritual, a ceremony, to perhaps symbolize something special.
And we worship an image of a dead person.
We're living in a consuming universe. We, all of us, are vampires.
Death might be the ultimate thrill that you can get out of life.
The extreme violence of the mass media, it's always been there in our art forms.
People would like to read about it, come to terms with it, and face up to it in fictional form.
The characters are being sacrificed for the viewer. To die through other people allows you to live yourself.
Whatever you create is not for now, it's for a future, and the future is overcoming death.
There was always that sense to try and transcend material nature. That idea that you are born, you have a life, you have sex, and then you die.
You're actually interacting with the future as opposed to the past or the present.
Technology has been able to take us to live to the age of 80, whereas AIDS and genocide now cuts it back to, say, 30.
People wish to escape rather than to express.
Artists are the first to try and deal with it, to try and deal with it emotionally.
It's much easier to watch television and be indoctrinated.
In a way, begin to prepare the ground for the fact that we will all die.
This is what makes Gothic music so profound. The music is dark, it is very ambient, it is a creation. It is an extension of that which comes from inspiration.
You become aware that you're alive. It reaffirms your sense of life, reaffirms your sense of living.
It expresses in an age where people would prefer to forget.
Perhaps that's what art has always been about.
Whose professions have taken them to the last moments of life. They face death to save others, or perhaps themselves.
You're waiting just for that frame. When that frame comes, you shoot that frame.
When I got into medical school, I had no idea what I was getting myself in for.
So a lot of what we do here is trauma, and that's a very sudden death.
Any social issues that affected black people, this is where I found myself. These pictures are historical pictures. These are pictures that will never be forgotten.
It's just usually youngsters, car accidents, shootings. We respond to the scene of whatever it is, be it someone's backyard for a drowning, the scene of an accident, for a burns patient. And this little helicopter, in fact, is the busiest helicopter in the world.
The first time I saw dead bodies was on the first day medical school.
During the Sharpeville massacre.
It's the first time a patient died.
Well, I had never seen so many people dead.
I can't really remember them.
I was a student nurse.
There were about 69 people dead and over 200 injured.
We went down to the mortuary and saw the fresh corpses, and a lot of people felt very sick. It didn't actually bother me. I was more sort of curious. Saying, oh.
It was an elderly patient who had liver problems. She was in liver failure and she was very jaundiced.
As a result, I was shocked.
And I went off to get her a glass of water. And when I came back, she had died.
Having to carry children, having to carry adults.
I couldn't quite understand what had happened.
I didn't do any close-ups.
The first thing that went through my mind was how very inconsiderate.
My editor said, well, if you're going to be shocked in this work, you better, wrap up your cameras and call it a day.
And if you start feeling very sorry and relating to all the family grief, etc., you'll go nuts fairly quickly.
Do I stop taking pictures and try and save the life?
If a patient comes in who is unconscious, who's never said a word, never moved, and all this, and then dies, you think, yeah, well, he was pretty dead when he came in here, Now, death in this job is something you experience pretty frequently. It depends on your shifts. So I think we'd rather see what we call decent trauma than we would see sprained ankles. Otherwise your job becomes very boring.
So you think 5 minutes ago that person was alive. Half an hour ago they left home, now they're not here.
It didn't matter whether my life was at risk or not.
I didn't think that this was someone's mom or someone's gran.
You see a guy who's 23, he's brain damaged or whatever.
I now see it as a loss from the family point of view.
He's dead, shot, etc. You think, well, it could happen to me.
When I walk down the streets and I see a dead person, I just pass it.
Try and not worry too much about the future. Take things as they come.
It is a uniquely human compulsion to not only tremble at what we fear, but also to laugh at it, to deny it power over us. Humor is perhaps our ultimate defiance of death.
People are too serious about death.
It's a pretty serious thing.
Yeah, I don't think there is a role for humour in death.
Death should be treated, certainly with respect.
I love going to those funerals.
It's not funny.
I find them very entertaining.
People don't take it seriously because they think they're going to live forever.
I tend to laugh at inappropriate moments.
There's nothing nice about losing a loved one.
The easiest way to deal with anything is make it humorous. It's such a serious moment, and everybody is so taken up with themselves. It's just obvious human nature. My grandmother's parakeet died.
It's just another thing.
I was laughing hysterically.
I mean, it has to happen.
The bird was standing on the perch, and then it fell off.
And there's nothing funny in it.
What do you do? Sorry? You can't even pronounce it. How do you manage? The electrical business. Do you do chairs? I think comedy can go anywhere, anytime, on any subject.
Black humour distances us from the horror. It makes a joke of the horror.
People who work in those environments who are surrounded by death, and they're like people who chop up the dead bodies. And
you could possibly crack a joke before you start or during an autopsy.
That's just a natural, it's a reaction.
Some patients use humour to hide behind so they don't have to deal with the real issues.
It's like Snoopy's gone to Jesus, my boy.
And some of them use it intentionally just to lighten the load and are able to be real.
Are there any non-smokers here? Please raise your, there must be. Raise your new constitutions. What was it? See how emphatic and sort of self-righteous a non-smoker can be. I'm so healthy. Oh, I'm going to live forever. Happy teeth, happy lungs, happy me.
The overuse of black humour, all it does is it distances you from your own feelings.
You have to distance yourself from everything in order to poke fun at it. You've got to understand it. You've got to have empathy and compassion.
Our humour tends to become a bit twisted and dark.
No one can really say what is sick in terms of making jokes about death for anyone else. Don't you hate that thing when people go to a funeral and they make these wonderful speeches about these complete bastards who've died? I hate that. There's never an honest funeral speech, is there? Ever. Oh, what a saint. What a man. It's like, I would like to see an honest funeral speech. Here lies dear Auntie Binky, and we are so glad the stinky old bitch is dead. People don't like to, people don't like to talk about death because it's like freaky, but fuck, once it's happened, it's happened.
I find it difficult where humour is used to screen real emotion.
Yes, I'm also human, but isn't it funny how we do this or how we do that?
It's a very good way of coping.
If a comedian gets up and does really well, he slays the room, that's the term. If you don't do well, no one laughs, that's called a death. So I figure we're the only people in our job who get to die regularly and get up again.
My name is John. Thanks so much. Good night.
We are caught in the headlights of advancing science. Today, our species lives longer than ever before. 200 years ago, we could expect to live for 34 years. Today, in parts of the world, we milk 75 precious years out of life. We now, more than ever in history, have the time to contemplate our mortality. Here, we find ourselves at our most vulnerable, at our most truthful. Through death, we define our lives and our humanity.